I went to the Anwa shipyard. Anwa is one of the two bidders for the major submarine procurement that our Canadian Armed Forces have been launching. And so I had constructive conversations with the vice chair of Anwa and with many people within his team. My job is to make sure that we're able to attract more investments by Anwa and more industrial benefits through this procurement. I also met with many companies, including companies such as LG and companies such as Hyundai Heavy Industries, Hyundai Motor, and also working on having meeting with Samsung. So, and finally, I met with many ministers, including my counterpart and the chief of staff of the president and the national security advisor. Now, in Tokyo, I'll be meeting with many private sector companies, including Hitachi and Panasonic, and the two companies that I just mentioned have just invested in two different projects. The first one being a transformer project worth $280 million in Varennes, Quebec, and another one which is in one of the major projects that was announced last 2 weeks ago, and it's for the Nouveau Monde graphite mine. So this is what I've been doing and looking forward to answering your questions. Just give me a second to be able also to say all of that in French. Donc, comme j'ai mentionné, je suis maintenant à Tokyo, j'étais en Corée. En Corée et à Tokyo, je suis là pour protéger des emplois, créer des emplois et également attirer des investissements au Canada. J'ai eu l'occasion d'aller visiter le chantier naval de Hanwha. Hanwha fait partie d'un des deux soumissionnaires pour le contrat de sous-marin, qui est un contrat très, très important qui a été lancé par les Forces armées canadiennes et pour lesquels on a plusieurs rencontres, autant avec TKMS, le consortium germano-norvégien, que aussi avec la compagnie coréenne. J'ai eu l'occasion aussi de rencontrer plusieurs compagnies, notamment Hyundai Motor, Hyundai Heavy Industries, LG et Samsung. Et j'ai rencontré aussi plusieurs ministres, dont mon homologue, et j'ai rencontré également le chef de cabinet du président et le conseiller à la sécurité nationale. Maintenant, je suis à Tokyo. J'aurai également l'occasion de rencontrer plusieurs compagnies, notamment aussi Panasonic et Hitachi. Hitachi vient tout juste d'annoncer un investissement important à Varennes de 280 millions et également Panasonic vient d'annoncer des investissements dans la nouvelle mine de graphite qui s'appelle Nouveau Monde Graphite, qui est également au Québec. Et j'aurai l'occasion de rencontrer plusieurs décideurs, politiciens, notamment mon homologue. Alors, ça va me faire plaisir de répondre à toutes vos questions.
Perfect. We'll now start the question period. As a reminder, one question, one follow-up. We'll start with Mackenzie Gray. Go ahead.
Hi, Minister. I hope you're having a nice time in Korea. Do you have any interest in becoming the Canadian ambassador to Paris?
Sorry, Mackenzie, I can't hear you well. The sound is not very good.
Is this better here?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
Do you have any interest in becoming Canada's ambassador to France?
Absolutely not. I'm focused on my job right now, which is to be the Minister of Industry and to fight for every single job in this country at a time of trade tensions. And so I'll continue to do that. I think, and Mackenzie, I think also what is really important is I have a very strong sense of duty towards my country. And I'm very much aware that we have to be able to engage with the private sector and also with governments. So two of my expertise, which is business and at the same time geopolitics, are actually very useful for Canada right now.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you saying back here in Ottawa that you believe that Canada was not getting the industrial benefits that it should from the F-35 project.
Mm.
With that in mind,
Mhm.
has your government had any conversations with either Lockheed Martin or the U.S. government about increasing those benefits if we go forward with the additional purchase of F-35s?
Well, many of us have many conversations with Lockheed Martin, and I did have conversations with Lockheed, and there was no surprises because actually I said publicly what I said privately to them. So there should not be any form of confusion. But that being said, I will be also engaging with Lockheed Martin in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Next question, Ashley Burke. Go ahead.
Good morning, Minister. The Prime Minister is expected to make an announcement today about more support for sectors that have been hit by Donald Trump's tariffs. What have you heard specifically from some of the industries that you're trying to address? And as well, are South Koreans voicing concerns to you about the government's new Buy Canadian strategy that could block their steel imports?
Thank you, Ashley. It's a very good question. So indeed, the Prime Minister will be announcing more support for sectors that are affected by the tariffs, including steel. And we know that the steel sector is, and the steel plants are very much affected by the tariffs. And we've been there to support the jobs and people working in the steel sector who have been struggling and quite anxious towards whether they could continue to have their jobs and continue to have their livelihoods. And so in that sense, we provided to Algoma Steel, for example, $400 million this summer to help to deal with the different tariffs. And at the same time, we've been working on making sure that Algoma Steel and ArcelorMittal in Hamilton and Stelco are able to have more of the domestic market in Canada, including on the defense side. I'm very happy to see that Irving Shipyard is buying much more steel from Algoma. Seaspan also in Vancouver has ordered steel for our own frigates and ships that they're building for the Canadian forces to Algoma as well. That being said, our measures are not enough and we need to go further. And that is why the Prime Minister will be making key announcements about how we can better protect our steel workers and our markets to be able to have a sustainable domestic market. I've had conversations with the South Koreans regarding this issue. I've had also conversations with the EU on this issue. The EU is working actively to be protecting its domestic market as well. And so this is a tendency that we're seeing around the world.
And did the EU and South Korea raise concerns? And then for my follow, how do you feel that the Prime Minister says the government does not have a feminist foreign policy and seems to be abandoning that focus that we saw during the Trudeau years, which you worked on?
So these are two questions, Ashley, but I'll take both. The first one is Canada has typically not exported a lot of steel outside of exporting it to the US. And our entire steel industry has been focusing on supporting and serving the US automakers. Now that 50% tariffs is imposed against our own steel, this business model doesn't work anymore. And that's why we need to help short term by protecting our market to foreign steel. Middle term, we need to make sure that the steel plants are able to adapt and pivot to do the right steel for our own domestic needs. What I mean by that is building the type of steel for railways or for infrastructure needs. And finally, longer term, we need to be able to have the right type of steel for our own defense industry. And also, we will be working on having more Canadian steel in every single of our infrastructure project, and also the home building that we'll be supporting. So when it comes to exporting steel to the EU, this is not part of the business model. And exporting steel to South Korea, this is not part of the business model. In terms of the steel coming into our market, well, we've been addressing this issue, and we started last summer because when we did that, we decided to have a different approach, whether we were dealing with free trade agreement countries and those who had non-free trade agreements with us. And so we wanted to value our partners that are part of free trade agreements with us. We'll continue to value also this approach, but the Prime Minister will have more to say this afternoon about that. When it comes to your second question, well, it's a foreign policy question, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs is the one, and the Prime Minister obviously is the one that can answer that question.
Thank you. Next question, David from Reuters.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, David, go ahead.
Hello. Couple of questions. Are you going to refer the proposed merger between Teck and Anglo to a national security review?
So the national security review for any transaction is always part of the process as the economic security one. And so we're following the process.
And secondly, I know there was some confusion over timelines. Do you have any idea roughly how long it might take to come to a decision on this?
Well, David, I've said in the next months, and I stand by my words.
Thank you. Next question, James from Canadian Press. Go ahead.
Yes, on the Anglo Teck deal, will
Mhm.
Anglo be required to shift its headquarters to Vancouver?
Well, so I won't comment on Anglo Tech more. You heard my last comments, and you heard also the company. My goal right now is to be able to not only go ahead with an independent process, but also to protect the credibility and the legitimacy of the process. And so in that sense, we'll continue to do a job. And when we have a decision, you'll be the first one to know.
And on the Hanwha discussions, could you
Mhm.
provide us a bit more detail about what you're looking for in terms of a submarine procurement and what the company must do in order to be successful?
Well, Jim, that's a very good question because there are three things we're looking in particular when it comes to the submarine procurement. First one is the military capabilities, obviously, and it's up to the Canadian Armed Forces and procurement PSPC to be able to make that assessment. And we think we have two very competitive bids coming from either the German, Norwegian consortium or the Korean one. The second criteria will be geopolitical alignment. So, you know, our relationship to Germany and Norway and being strong NATO allies, which we have a similar position on Ukraine, etc., and also cooperation with Norway, particularly on the Arctic, or being a bit more focused on the Indo-Pacific as being a Pacific country and being able to work with an important partner, as we know that in the Indo-Pacific, there's no security architecture like we're seeing, for example, in the North Atlantic with NATO. So that will be the second criteria. And thirdly, it will be industrial benefits. And that's where I come in, because my job is to maximize the amount of jobs that will be created through the second biggest procurement that the Canadian Armed Forces will be working on. And so that's why I'm having conversations with many companies across Canada that want to be part of the supply chain of either TKMS or Hanwha or both. And at the same time, I'm talking to German companies and also to Korean companies to see how much they can invest in Canada to create jobs that are not necessarily linked to necessarily the procurement. And thirdly, I'm working with Canadian companies that want to sell products to either Germany or Korea or both. And so that's why the industrial benefits part of this procurement is really important, and I'm working really hard on it.
Thank you. Next question, Judy from CTV.
Hello, Minister. I'm hoping you can clarify a little bit. You said that it's not our pattern usually, and not part of our history in which Canada exports steel to Asia and to Europe because we've been so focused on the US.
Yep.
Does that mean that you are not placing steel as a priority in terms of the submarine procurement, that there is no requirement for them to use Canadian steel in buying these submarines?
Oh, well, listen, absolutely not. So what I'm talking to you is about patterns of our steel industry, which has been focused on the US and has not exported around the world. That was just not the business model. What we're doing now is that they need to be able to focus on the internal market, because the internal market can actually be a market that is profitable for our steel sector, as long as they're able to have access to the market without any form of dumping from any other countries that are manufacturing, producing steel. When it comes to our defense procurement, we will absolutely make sure that there are steel and aluminum and sometimes, depending, lumber requirements, because we need to protect jobs in these tariff sectors that are completely unjustifiably targeted by the American administration. So yes, I've had conversations with TKMS and also with UNWA.
Minister, have you put then requirements, a quota level for steel, for aluminum or lumber, or have you just left it open that if you use these Canadian products, you will get higher points in terms of the RFP?
So it depends on the procurement, but clearly we are looking at how we can use our defense procurement, including the submarine deal, to make sure that we protect jobs in the tariff sectors and also in creating jobs across the country. So I'll be presenting a defense industrial strategy with the Minister of Defense before the end of the year. And so you'll have more details on how we're looking at it, but definitely the conversation about steel is in every single conversation linked to defense procurement. And I must say steel, aluminum, and when it applies, lumber also.
Thank you. Next question, Nushud, go ahead.
Hi, Minister.
Hi, Nushud.
Our understanding is that, as you mentioned, supports are coming today for the steel industry. Is this an
Mhm.
acknowledgement that a trade deal with the US is increasingly unlikely?
Well, listen, when it comes to any form of negotiations with the US, we'll let the Prime Minister do his work.
I also want to ask you about the plants in Ingersoll, the auto plants in Ingersoll and Brampton. There's been,
Yep.
discussions about putting potentially some sort of military vehicle in those plants to fill the void for now. I'm wondering if you can give any updates on those discussions, or what conversations are you having about those plants?
So I've had conversations with Stellantis, and I've been clear that they need to abide by their obligations under the contracts that they have with the Government of Canada. And we expect them to identify a model for the Brampton plant, period. And we actually have been also engaging with Unifor, and we take note of the fact that there is been hiring of workers for the Windsor plant. That 1,400 jobs for the third shifts are actually now open for people in Windsor to be able to take. But we think that this was part of the commitment of the company. And at the same time, they need to make sure that they abide by their commitment for Brampton. So that's my point regarding Stellantis. When it comes to GM, we've been having also a working group that was established with GM. We know that the situation was different for GM because the Bright Drop, which is the vehicle that was produced at the CAMI plant in Ingersoll, was a commercial failure. But notwithstanding that, we expect GM also to be able to invest in Ingersoll, and we're working on identifying a new model for Ingersoll. And we're working also with the workers, and I want to salute their courage and their resilience. And we'll continue to work with Unifor on that. And at the same time, we are closely following GM when it comes to their third shift, also in Oshawa, because we want to make sure that we fight for every single job, including for the third shift in Ottawa. So that's my main priority.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. Olivier de TVA, go ahead.
Oui, bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, je t'entends, Olivier. Je suis contente de répondre en français. Après toi.
Bonjour, Madame Joly. Je vous amène sur
Ouais.
un autre sujet, par contre, parce que aujourd'hui, il y a le nom d'un de vos collègues, M. El Khoury, là, qui est lié à cette histoire au PLQ avec Pablo Rodriguez. Ce serait une conversation entre M. El Khoury et Mme Risky qui aurait mené à la crise. Est-ce que ça vous préoccupe de voir qu'un de vos collègues semble lié maintenant à cette histoire-là?
Écoutez, ce sont deux différents partis. Le Parti libéral du Québec et le Parti libéral du Canada sont deux partis complètement différents. Je l'ai appris en même temps que vous, j'imagine, en lisant les nouvelles. Et du reste, mon collègue aura à donner des explications. C'est ce que j'ai à dire sur la question.
Et peut-être juste, est-ce que vous, ou vous savez si vous ou d'autres de vos collègues ont participé à la campagne de M. Rodriguez à la chefferie du PLQ?
Moi, personnellement, je n'ai pas participé, mais j'ai peut-être des collègues qui pourront répondre à cette question.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. We have one last question. Time for one last question. Steve Chase, go ahead.
Hi, Minister.
Hi,
Thanks
Steve.
for taking the call.
Pleasure.
You talked about speaking to Lockheed Martin, and I presume to see if we can get more industrial benefits from Lockheed Martin for the F-35. What most of us remember is that there was a competition, a pretty lengthy competition in which we considered industrial benefits, we considered the technical merits of the plane, and in fact, it was your predecessor, Mr. Champagne, who signed off on the industrial benefits from the F-35. So the idea that you're going back to Lockheed Martin to seek industrial benefits, are we to take that this is that Mr. Champagne didn't do his job and that there's something you can do that he didn't do? Because he's now the finance minister and he was part of the same government that made the decision based on, you know, what F-35 was offering. So did he do something wrong?
Well, Steve, listen, my job is to be able to defend jobs in Canada in the context of trade tensions. And what is really, really important to understand is that we suspended the contract on with Lockheed on F-35 back in the spring. And so in that sense, we did so because there were different reasons, but including the fact that we thought that we didn't get enough industrial benefits. And so I'll continue to make sure that we defend our point. And at the same time, I'll continue to engage with the company.
Second question is about the measures you discussed at the outset of the call, the measures to limit steel imports from other countries. Right now, we have 25% tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum, and we're trying to reset relations with China to build relations, to build new export markets, to do exactly the sort of thing that you're doing with as you travel through Asia. Doesn't this work at cross purposes with our efforts to repair relations with China? Now we have to inform them that we're going to be limiting their steel imports in addition to the 25% tariffs we slapped on them last year.
Well, listen, the Prime Minister will have more to say regarding the different measures we'll be announcing today. But when it comes also to our engagement with countries, I think that many countries around the world understand that the steel sector is a very specific sector, which is highly impacted across the world, including in Europe, including in Canada, with 50% tariffs. And so Europeans are in the midst of protecting their own market to make sure that they protect their own jobs in Germany and Spain, etc. And we're doing the same. Meanwhile, we want to be able to work with countries with which we have free trade agreements, including, of course, Europe and including with certain Asian countries. And so for the rest, when it comes to our trade relationships with China and others, our approach has always been no surprises. So our goal is to be able to engage with these countries while we're just defending our national interest.
Thank you. This is all the time we had for today. This concludes the press conference.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.